Hey folks, welcome to the Unsung Podcast. I'm Mark. That's Chris. Say hi, Chris.
At the tone, please press 1 to speak to an agent. Mark, does that sound familiar to you?
I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, how you doing? Mark has had a rough day, and let's just get us out the road here. One of the advantages about having a podcast is that you can just get shit off your chest, even if people don't want to hear it. So, Mark, before we go any further, because we've got a lot of stuff to get through today, do I get some shit off your chest?
Man, do I have some shit? It's actually really trivial shit as well, but I mean, it'll make somebody laugh.
It's relatable. It'd be like, you know, the stand-up things. You're like, what about airline food? You know?
So I broke my phone last night, and that meant I kind of put tunes on in my car this morning when on the way to work. And I was going into the office, only going to the office one day a week, right? So I went in the office today. The radio station,
what, are you French?
I know, right? The radio station that I chose to put on was Radio X. I thought, at least I'll get something vaguely rocky.
Radio what?
Radio X.
X?
Radio X.
Joe McGlynn. Our guest this week, what do you think of Radio X?
I've no fucking idea, man.
Exactly.
Well, this is going to turn you off immediately when I start telling you this next bit. So, who's the morning DJ at Radio X? Fucking Chris Moyles, mate.
Oh, right away, that's a fucking strike,
Right, so...
Hang on, Joe McGlynn of the Shit You May Not Have Seen podcast.
Yes.
Do you have any feelings on Chris Moyles?
He's an absolute bell end. That's about as much as I can...
That remains true. It remains very true.
Mark, go on.
So... I get in the car at 9 o'clock in the morning. The first thing that happens is the news, right? And the newsreader's been serious, as a newsreader would be. And he starts talking about the football results from last night, and that is AC Milan versus Inter in the Champions League final. Semi-final, right? The crucial word semi. So what does Chris Moyles do? He fucking butts in, makes a semi joke. He's like, semi.
For fuck's
and I'm
sake.
like, mate, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. What the fuck are you doing? And then he continues. He's like, I'm sure the final will be hard. And stuff like that, and I'm like, what was the other joke he made? Will they rise to the occasion? Some, fucking
pure base level fucking
absolutely,
bullshit, man.
And his fucking his three co-hosts, it's him and three fucking co-hosts, right? Gutting themselves laughing. And I'm like, it's too early in the morning for this shit, right? So it then proceeds to then from my journey to work is 15 minutes. And for the next fucking 15 minutes, not a single note of music is played. It's just him whittering away about some totally inane fucking nonsense.
That sounds about right for him, man.
And making really shit jokes and just like...
So this isn't just a beef, this is a study of the death of radio.
Yeah, everybody's wondering why radio's fucking dying. It's because of cunts like this.
Chris Moyles
You know what I mean?
killed radio.
I've only got about 100 songs between the fucking
exactly
stations, man.
And it's quite funny because I remember when Chris Moyles was quite popular back in the day at Radio 1, which I guess was the early 2000s. People were saying back then that this is the death of radio because this guy's an absolute fucking arsehole, and it remains the case today.
They've not learnt their fucking lesson because he's still there.
Joe McGlynn, singer in the band Man Must Die.
Unfortunately.
That wasn't actually what I was getting at with my initial bit on At the Beat, please press this button. Because Mark, I think you got something else to get off.
Yeah, so because my phone is fucked, I spent 45 minutes of my lunch hour on the phone to EE trying to get my phone fixed. Oh, no. Couldn't fix it. Phoned me back later on in the afternoon. I missed the call. I phoned them back at 5 o'clock. Spent another half hour on the phone, and the guy was like, "Look, mate, you've tried everything you possibly can. I don't know how to fix your phone, so you need to phone Samsung." And they said, "We're going to send you a new SIM card within 2 days, and then if that doesn't work, we can then try something else." And I'm like, "Mate, what the fuck do you want from me here?" You know what I mean? So I've spent a long time on
You're the fucking expert. That's why I'm phoning you.
Exactly.
So what are the implications for you, the listener? Those are that
help me buy a new phone.
At the end of this show, Mark will not have a Nexus because he spent the whole day too raging to Nexus.
Far too raging.
Too raging to Nexus. That was a bit of an experimental start to the show. You ever heard the track The Futurist by Shellac? I think it's Futurist, where they just play like the same 3 notes for about 18 minutes to see if people can get through it, and then it gets to a really good bit. We're trying that out this week.
Yeah, well, that's my escapades today.
Joe McGlynn.
Yes.
What else have you done in your life to justify your presence in this room right now?
Right now, fuck, I don't know. I'm in a death metal band.
You're in a death metal band called
Man Must Die. Yep,
that's the one. That's the one I name checked earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe, you also have a rather specialist podcast of your own on a little known band called Queen.
Yes, correct.
back-to-back absolute banger merchants that they are. What's the name of that one?
It's called In the Lap of the Pods, Queen Podcast.
That's a good one, actually. It's a lot better now.
Christ, it's what, 3 years now, I think. I've been doing it quite a while, aye.
Bona fide Queen authority. I could actually see you coming back on here to settle one of our future arguments.
If it's about Queen, then I'm up for it.
Exactly, yeah. But we've had a few of these over the course. Kiss, Motley Crue was a really big one. But
easily Kiss, man.
Yeah,
Motley
exactly.
Crue blow, man.
Good. That's not why you're on here, but it now makes me feel that was a good decision. Listeners, I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that by the time we really get going here, our Scottish accents might get broader, because Joe's is a strong brogue.
I'm from Govan in Glasgow, so I
work in Govan, actually.
And you fucking joy.
Tell me about it, man.
To be fair, not that many people do.
Whereabouts, man? No cunt works in Govan. That's why I get out. I was a fucking pariah because I had a job.
So, as I mentioned as well in my first introduction to Joe, you're also on the Shit You May Not Have Seen podcast alongside co-host Scott Walker.
Correct.
I guested with you guys recently. That was a lot of fun.
It's brilliant. It was really good.
We covered a Robin Williams film called World's Greatest Dad.
Beautiful.
And that is a sort of unsung for movies. It's
easily,
not super obscure, but things that slip under a lot of people's radars where you get talking to them and you're like, what, you've not seen that? What?
Totally.
It's that kind of chat. So yeah, that is the theme of that podcast. You may enjoy it, and if you like Scottish accents, fill your boots.
Yeah, there's plenty of that. I'll try and tidy it up for you guys, man.
See, I'm not sure that's what the audience wants, because we do get a fair number of messages going, love the accents, guys. And we also have a lot of expats that rely on us for their dose at home.
Aye, totally. I mean, see, our Queen one, it's obviously me, my best mate and his older brother, we're all from Govan, do you know what I mean? And when we first started the podcast,
argument at a chip van.
Well, it was just like fucking but people love it. I mean, we get people, from America, from Germany, all over the place, because it's quite popular. They understand what we're saying, but we make a wee joke about that. It's funny how people in Germany and America can understand us, but people down south can't.
I see that. Yeah, but we don't we've never actually actively tried to get an audience outside of Britain. But
neither have we, obviously.
It just somehow happens.
I don't know if we've ever actively tried to get an audience.
We have. We've done live shows. People came.
I mean, you guys sound proper spoken Scottish folk next to my podcast. We sound like fucking.
Yeah, I've got phone voice.
We sound like rough bastards, which we are. So
I can get just as jakey as the next guy once the Zoom player stops recording. So this week's show is courtesy of Joe.
Yes.
We just asked you to have a wee think and come up with something that you thought, the parameters. It can be unsung in that nobody's heard of it. It can be unsung in that it's a famous band, but it's a lesser celebrated album. Or it can even be unsung a la maybe Nine Inch Nails, where it's a celebrated album, but you still feel that it's under-acknowledged just in its greatness and its influence and stuff. Before we even say the name, I am going to say I think this album probably falls closest to that last category.
Absolutely,
this week. Totally. This is the most celebrated album by this band, fairly unanimously, I think. Mm-hmm. The band and the album are?
Carcass, and the album's Heartwork.
Heartwork. Carcass.
Yeah.
A band from Liverpool, formed in 1985.
The same age as me?
Really?
Yes, and despite being the same age as you, they literally only have 7 albums to date, and you've probably got more albums than that.
And my phone.
That kind of blew my mind. I just assumed, having only ever really brushed past Carcass in any sense, I did not know they had so few records.
Well, they had a 17-year hiatus, but they just disbanded. Do you know what I mean? Did nothing. And just to clarify, if Carcass are listening to this, they'll be fucking raging at you said they're from Liverpool, because they aren't actually.
Oh
no,
correct me.
They're from outside places in Liverpool, but they rehearsed and kind of got their name in the Merseyside, so everybody thinks they're from Liverpool, but actually they aren't.
I did notice that their accents weren't as broad in the interviews. I watched a fierce amount of Carcass interviews before this show, by the way. I honestly watched 3.5 hours.
Me as well.
So the 4 key members in the context of this conversation are Jeff Walker, Bill Steer, Ken Owens, and Michael Arnott.
Amit. Yep. If Wikipedia, if that's a Wikipedia, it's probably a fuck up.
Ah, okay. He's Scandinavian, right?
He's half Swedish, half British.
Is he the guy
English.
that's now an arch enemy?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes.
Is he not Star Arch Enemy?
He did die. Yeah. It's like a poor man. It started off as like a poor man's Carcass, in my opinion, and then. By the way, I'm a negative cunt, so I'll just they're right, not.
I did notice Jeff Walker in some of the interviews being asked about that. Do you think that Arch Enemy are awfully similar to kind of Heartwork era Carcass? And
I mean, the answer's obviously yes, right?
If like 13-year-olds had fucking started a band and tried to copy it, maybe.
So it was then when they came off their hiatus, there was a drummer for Arch Enemy that played for them, wasn't it?
It was, aye. That's right.
Until they both left, because obviously Arch Enemy is a much more lucrative endeavour than playing in Carcass.
Aye, absolutely, aye. At the time, anyway, probably still, aye. Arch Enemy are a bigger band.
I think they got to a major label, did they not, Arch Enemy?
Aye, well, Nuclear Blast is...
Did they not get a proper major?
Maybe, man. I don't really follow them, man. They're not really my thing, do you know what I mean?
I saw them 2 months ago, I think.
Did you?
At the Academy, opening for...
Behemoth.
And they were... that whole gig was pretty...
It's like metal for kids, man.
Century Media, that's...
Aye, I knew it was either Century Media or Nuclear Blast. Couldn't remember what one it was.
It was... it's one of those shows. Weaver was at it as well. And I found myself standing behind a guy with a t-shirt that said anti-fascist.
Oh.
And I was like, it's this band.
Aye, the Kyle band.
Behemoth brought out like all this anti-Antifa merch. Like, absolutely.
Just don't know what it means,
it's like, was it kill your local Antifa or something like that? They've got...
there's a lot of dodgy shit, man, with that band. I don't think... I don't want to tar the entire band, but definitely the singer, Ergo. There's been pictures of him with high up guys in like fascist groups and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Are they not quite well regarded in metal circles, Behemoth?
Aye. Yeah. I mean, I don't get it. Do you know what I mean?
I didn't think they were very good, yeah.
I mean, it's a wee bit style over substance for me, man. Do you know what I mean? It's all about... I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks good. It looks cool. Musically, that's another band that, like, they had like about 7 albums out before they even get popular. They were just this kind of shitty black death metal band, and then like all of a sudden, kind of maybe like mid 2000s, they did like one record and it basically fucking blew up, and then from then on they've kind of looked up on in a different light.
They're Polish, yeah.
Aye,
big Polish scene for that, I suppose.
Aye, Decapitated also as well. They're fair as well, but they're a better band in my opinion.
So before we really get into the history, I have to admit, to me, Carcass in my head are old school. Mentally, they occupy a place like in the murky kind of early to mid 80s, and
like sound like Venom sort of like kind of
there's something quite primordial about Carcass in my head, right? But that's not right.
No, it's
because not. Reek of Putrefaction came out the year that Nirvana recorded Bleach.
88, wasn't it?
Which is mental. And so the timeline in my head of this band is really different from the reality of it, and we'll actually bump up against that a few times as we're going through.
Were you surprised at how modern they sounded even back then?
They don't sound modern on Reek of Putrefaction.
No, apart from that, even the next record, what's that called?
Symphonies of Sickness.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like any band today could write it.
Yeah, I suppose. I think that Reek was my first run-in with them, and when I did first hear that, it wasn't something I was really too interested in anyway. And I got a bit older, I think I would probably have taken to it, but I think also I just looked at Carcass and the name and the artwork, which we'll talk about obviously, and just assumed they were this bunch of fucking Luddite metal guys that were just the usual bullshit, you know, and singing about gross stuff. To be honest, I had a kind of similar take on Cannibal Corpse as well, and I think the more I've actually gotten to hear from especially the members of these bands, the more time I have for them. Carcass in particular, like, come across really, really well.
And educated as well.
Yeah, just sound just like very friendly people. I mean, I know Jeff is meant to be a wee bit like a bit of a sense of humour.
It depends how much you want to go into it on here, but I've played with Carcass about 2 or 3 times, so I've had a couple of wee interactions with the man himself.
That could be interesting because
not major.
They're about to play in Glasgow, and a couple of good friends.
I'm going to go.
Friends of mine are supporting. So
who's that?
Coffin Mulch. That's the word you're looking for.
Mulch.
Yeah, Coffin Mulch.
Fucking quality name. Brilliant.
I saw today that it's sold out.
I'm not surprised.
Is it? Oh, that's me fucked in. I'll be going.
I wish
I'll get you the guest list with his Coffin Mulch pals.
You know Jeff. You've met him a couple of times.
Just give him a wee text.
Jeff, remember me?
Let's go.
Let a square go.
So that sounds pretty juicy. So we're going to save that for later.
I'm building it up to be something that
to
fucking
keep people listening. Let's go into some of the basic history, okay, and just jump in at any point here because I've got this all kind of laid out, hopefully chronologically. So. As we said, Bill Steer and Ken Owens, Carcass was started by them in 85 originally,
correct.
but then stopped. Jeff has also said that he designed the original logo for the band before the band had even rehearsed together.
The Metallica vibe, that, innit? They did the exact same thing.
Bill has said that his folks never really got the band, but were also really supportive, letting them rehearse at their house, including things like deflecting complaints from neighbours and all that kind of stuff, which, you know, when you hear what the band sounded like, his parents must have been very, very chill people. Bill joined a D-beat band called Dis Attack, and in 1986 they released an EP called A Bomb Drops. I actually quite like that. It's kind of cool, riffy, old school punk, and there's a nice quality of the sound of the EP as well. Goodness me, talking of Sea Kyles, it actually reminded me of the way I felt about the first Mayhem release as well. Like just the griminess of it. Like, there's a really nice acoustic quality to it, really analog and stuff, you know. The singer in that band was named Andrew Peck. He apparently changed his name to Sanjeev after taking a trip to India.
Because he very temporarily sang for Carcass and they did that demo with him.
Oh, okay. That's right. Absolutely. So Jeff Walker, who we've been talking about, he'd replaced the Dis Attack bassist. Around about the same time as well, Bill Steer replaced Mr. Justin Broderick in Napalm Death and recorded Side B of Scum.
Side B of Scum, and he did the EP after as well. I think, what's the name of it? Death by Manipulation? Can't remember, but he did an EP as well. Aye.
The band that was formerly known as Dis Attack then changed their name to Carcass, which was because 2 of them were in the band that had been Carcass and had stopped, and then they'd kind of consumed this Dis Attack band for the inside out. So Dis Attack became Carcass and became the kind of trio lineup of the kind of definitive early year lineup of Carcass, and also changed the direction musically a bit. Sanjeev recorded, as you said, one EP. It's called Flesh Ripping Sonic Torment, and then left. Walker, Steer and Owens would share vocal duties for what was a 4-day recording of their first album, Reek of Putrefaction. We'll talk about that in a wee bit more detail shortly, but it sounds like absolute shit, which was almost a guarantee that John Peel would love it, and love it he did. So they ended up recording a Peel session in 89. That Peel session was released as an EP. The band's names were listed on it as K. Grim Gargler, J. Awful Mangler, and W.G. Thorax Embalmer.
Can you imagine a band like fucking Carcass getting played on fucking a Chris Moyles session now? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's good. You brought that back.
Yeah, smart movement.
Good writing, that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That year they also appeared in an episode of Red Dwarf.
Amazing.
What is this? Who is that jerk?
It's me.
You? Age 17 is my first band, Smeg and the Heads. What are you wearing? It was all arranged, what everyone was wearing. It was called Sham Glam.
Look at that collar. You could go hang gliding.
One of the first songs I ever wrote. It was called Om.
Nothing like a good old-fashioned love song, eh?
And to think I genuinely thought we were going to be massive. God, I was stupid.
Who are the other two?
The whacked-out crazy hippie drummer's called Dobbin. He joined the police force in the end. Became a grand wizard in the Freemasons. The bassist called Gaza. He was a neo-Marxist nihilistic anarchist. Eventually joined a large insurance company and got his own parking space.
Which was actually supposed to be Shane Embury and Mick Harris.
Yep, that's right.
But they didn't want to do it.
So they pulled out, and then there was some other issue around somebody else that was going to do it, not having musicians' union membership. So
that's right,
so they couldn't do it. So Carcass got offered it. There was also loads of rumours that, Craig Charles used to go and see the band, and Jeff absolutely dismissed that outright. In fact, Jeff said that he met Craig Charles in a bar 2 years later and went up to him and went, "Alright man, I'm that guy off your show." And Craig Charles was,
"Of course you were, mate.
Of course you were, mate, that's right." Yep, in 1992, and we're in 1992 already, part of they were part of the Earache Gods of Grind tour with Cathedral, Entombed and Confessor in both Europe and the USA. Their Tools of the Trade EP was released that year as well to coincide with the Gods of Grind tour. This is another kind of interesting thing to me, because grindcore to me is a mid-80s genre, right? This tour was taking part in 1992. It continued into 1993.
Yep.
That's the same year that Korn came out. That Korn's first album came out. They were doing a grindcore tour, and I just find that fucking a mad clash of worlds there.
Aye, absolutely.
Because they're not. It's not even like they are one generation apart. To me, there's like grindcore, and then there's something else, and then there's fucking new metal. It's mad to me that Korn's first album is coming out when there's still a kind of original grindcore band tour happening.
Yeah, they weren't a grindcore band at that point at all, a grind band at that point at all.
No, they weren't.
Well, Carcass,
yeah.
They wouldn't have called themselves grind anyway. They always referred to themselves as kind of death metal sort of stuff. But it is grind.
Absolutely. We'll parse that a wee bit as they start to talk about the labels. But they were on the Gods of Grind tour.
Yeah.
So, they weren't like
to be fair. To be fair, Cathedral are a doom band.
Yeah, Cathedral's a weird one to be on that.
Aye, I think it was just
even Entombed, it was Death and Roll in it. So
exactly.
But yeah, so Heartwork in 93 didn't feature Amit's rhythm guitar because his passport got locked in a room in Israel
apparently.
Locked in a flat in Israel, and he missed the recording sessions.
Didn't seem to have much of an impact, to be honest.
No, so I'm quite happy that he didn't actually record on it.
Yeah, well, Jeff's actually said that the passport thing was the reason he missed it, but that was only just a sign of the cracks that were beginning to show in his enthusiasm for the band anyway.
Jeff played the rhythm guitar on that as well as bass.
I thought Bill played all the guitar.
No, Bill Steer played all the guitars on it. I played all the rhythm guitars, and then Amit did his leads. Some of the leads, no other leads, but his own leads.
The album got a US release via Columbia 3 months after it was released in the UK, and Amit left soon after. He was actually replaced, but they changed guitarist a couple of times after that, didn't they?
There was a guy called Michael something, and there was another guy called Carlo that did it as well.
That's right. Ken Owen had started a band called Black Star with Jeff, and also with Mark Griffiths from Cathedral. After Carcass had kind of decided they were going to split in 95, the name Black Star came from a track that would be on the Swan Song album by Carcass. But Ken Owens actually suffered a brain hemorrhage, a stroke, in 1999, and the band was wrapped up. he survived, and he stayed really close with Carcass, appearing on Surgical Steel album and also on stage a number of times. When you watch the interviews, he's always completely involved in all the discussions that they do.
Yep.
I think they've got some arrangement in place where it's like equal split on money from the band with the guy as well.
Because he was such a big part of the band, you know, up until what happened to him, you know.
And the band, as you said, took a huge hiatus and reformed. I think they initially reformed in 2007.
For a reunion tour.
Yeah, but they didn't record for quite some time after
that. Like 5 or 6 years or something like that.
But obviously minus Ken Owens due to health reasons. But he's playing again. He plays drums. I think he programs drums as well.
There's electronic music apparently.
Electronic stuff, yeah. Let's talk a wee bit about lyrics in this band. The early lyrical stuff, you know, along with the art, was mostly really grotesque and differed a lot as a result from the kind of politically left grindcore and hardcore scene, because, you know, Napalm Death, bands like that were particularly political in a left of centre way. I mean, that was that whole kind of hatred thing that went on between them and black metal as well. That said, you know, there's plenty of songs about animal rights scattered across Carcass's career. You know, singing ultra grotesque lyrics is one thing, but the original trio were always either vegetarian or vegan. I think they all had been vegan at one point. Bill and Jeff went from vegan to vegetarian. I mean, Bill did say, though, that in the early years they were pretty militant. Like, they wouldn't have been very friendly to somebody eating meat in their presence. You know, by the time they were touring with that other guy, Michael, he was...
he was a meat eater.
Yeah, they were like, he ate steak for breakfast, that guy, and they weren't as upset. But yeah, Bill said he just got tired of the lifestyle, especially on tour, where it was really hard to do it sustainably and enjoyably. Jeff, on the other hand, said that he went from vegan to vegetarian because a girl made him a cheesy lasagna, and he didn't have the heart to say no. He made a comment about it just shows how shallow I was. I'd do anything to get into a girl's pants.
Well, looking like him, he would need to fucking... he needs all the help he can get, man.
Genre, yeah, so this is like a bit of a disputed tag thing. Jeff feels they've always played death metal, right? He hated the grindcore term to begin with. Was it Mick Harris?
Mick Harris from Napalm Death. He was the first guy to kind of coin the term.
Yeah. You know, we spoke about this a bit in the Pig Destroyer episode that we did. We kind of went into the history of grindcore and goregrind and porno grind and all these kind of offshoots. Grindcore classics, you know, for folks that are just hearing this one, would maybe include Horrified by Repulsion, which... That was recorded in 86 but didn't come out until
that's kind of held up by like Napalm Death and bands that a lot of people consider Napalm to be the first grindcore band, but if you ask them they'd probably say Repulsion.
Right. There's also Ultimo Mondo Cannibale by Impetigo, 1990, big US grind band. You've got some other bands that pop up across Europe, like Cock and Ball Torture for Germany.
They're more like that porno grind kind of stuff.
Porno grind, yeah. Regurgitate for Sweden, Hemorrhage for Spain, I think, are a gore grind band. I think they wear like surgical, you know, outfits and stuff like that. They're often mentioned in relation to it. And then you've got, you know, as we said, the Pig Destroyer, Exhumed, and Anal Cunt, who are less obviously sort of gore grind, but there's a lot of overlap, and there are songs with, you know, pretty grotesque themes that would probably qualify or fall under that category. Going back to Carcass, as we said, 7 albums. Sometimes when I'm trying to like get a feel for what people actually think about bands' back catalogues, especially if I don't know them very well, we'll refer to some of the kind of online ranking sites and try and sort of take the temperature of what people are saying out there. So I got a few of them, I gathered a few of them together, and it's pretty interesting reading, I think. Best of our albums had Heartwork at number 1, followed by Necroticism Descanting the Insalubrious.
Correct.
It's the full title of the third album from 1991, followed by Swan Song, followed by Surgical Steel, followed by Symphonies of Sickness, followed by Torn Arteries, and they had Reek of Putrefaction in last place. And Best of our albums is quite a good one because it's usually voted for by fans, and you get a bit of insight from that.
Did you see when you were doing your research? Did you see when Bill Steer ranked the albums for Noisy?
No.
His order was essentially the same, apart from the fact that Surgical Steel was just released, therefore it was first.
Oh, first, really?
Because they just released it, and it's like, well, I think it's the fucking best thing ever. But everything else, like Heartwork and the order's exactly the same.
But he said since that Heartwork's his favourite Carcass record overall.
Aye.
Yeah. Louder Sound deviated a wee bit. They had Necro at 1 and Heart at 2. We Have the Pit back to Heart at 1, Necro at 2. Both of them had Swan Song in last place, and Reek of Putrefaction in second last place. Loudwire had Symphonies of Sickness at number 1, which is kind of controversial.
That's just a fucking hipster pick, man.
Is that what that is?
That's a hipster pick.
Yeah. They had Heartworks at number 2, and they had Swan Song in last place, along with Reek of Putrefaction second last place. So that's a pretty standard pattern there, that Heartwork would be either first or occasionally second for the hipster pick, but then bang last was almost always Swan Song, and before it would be Reek and Swan Song there for very different reasons.
Yeah,
totally. Aye, absolutely.
So talking about Reek of Putrefaction, then 1988 it came out. It sounds fucking awful, and the band hated the way it turned out, but John Peel loved it, as we said. It was released just a year after Scum by Napalm Death. It is hard to imagine a music scene now where you could release an album that sounds this bad and is this sloppy and get successful. I am not saying that means that that's a good thing, because Carcass went on and did great things, and if this album hadn't done well at the start, if John Peel hadn't put them on that show, he may well have created their career. Just, he did it with Napalm. Absolutely. Napalm Death, we did exactly the same thing. Do you know what I mean? He basically gave them a platform for, Napalm were massive. Do you know what I mean? Because of him.
Yeah. In that Noisy interview, he said, Bill Steer says that at the time, he remembers a lot of people laughing about how bad the production was, and thinking that it wasn't really very highly rated by anybody, that record, but John Peel liked to put unlistenable stuff on the radio, therefore he got behind it. He's got a fondness for it because sometimes you can hear a good riff peeking through the mess, and he thinks that's quite endearing in ways, which fair enough, he's entitled to his opinion. But
it's quite funny as well, because as soon as Carcass got better at their instruments, he completely lost all interest in them when they started becoming more like a proper band.
Yeah, we could actually play the music
actually
properly.
Could hear what they were doing. That was just him.
And that's the thing. So there's kind of two sides to that, because now we live in an era of moils, bringing that back
totally,
again.
Fucking
it's coming a thread.
Fucking hell, man.
Yeah. We live in an era of moils where there is no real platform for that kind of stuff. These bands that do specialise in raw music are just seen as being unsuitable. Who is the last band that came out that was really truly rough as fuck but did really well?
Yeah,
maybe Sonic Youth or something like that. Maybe.
That's you're going in. You're going deep into the art rock scene. Deep into the art rock scene.
I think Reek of Putrefaction is liked by folk that are into kind of like noise rock and art rock for the wrong reason. It wasn't intended to be a statement of look how fucking chaotic this is. It's just guys playing badly, because at that point they weren't really a band. They were just guys that went in, did a record, and it came out the way it came out, but people found it and thought, oh, this is really cool because it's a fucking mess. Do you know what I mean?
Well, they clearly had an idea, because they kind of knew sort of roughly what they wanted to do, because let's not forget, the next record came out a year later,
and it's very together.
You know what I mean? So they were obviously they had an idea of a direction they wanted to go in. They just weren't capable enough to really get there as players.
I think they hadn't really played that much as well. I think obviously by the time between the first record and doing the second, they'd played a lot more shows.
They had,
and obviously
they talk about their touring, their heavy touring and gigging as being the reason for such a rapid rise. In terms of their proficiency in their playing, and therefore the change in sound from album to album. But yeah, once grind in general got technical, it never looked back. When you go to stuff like Pig Destroyer and things like that, incredibly good players. There's really, really fast, technical, tight music.
Yep.
Going back to the origins of grind as being like a mush, as being a grimy, ugly, scatty mess.
Aye.
It's crazy to think that that's where it came from, because it has become prohibitively technical. Like, I mean, I couldn't go and play in a grind band, because I just don't have the chops, and that's the absolute antithesis of how it started out.
Aye, because I mean, it kind of came out of the anarcho punk scene, really. In the kind of mid '80s. There was a place called the Mermaid Bar in Birmingham that was like the hub for like that's where the original Napalm Death, when they had Justin Broderick and the Ceaseface, Mick Harris was the drummer, and there was I can't remember the other guy's name, Lidlaw or something like that. But when they started, they were just a gen up cross punk band, and that whole scene was in that one pub, and they would get people like Siege, Extreme Noise Terror and stuff. They would come and play these places. So grindcore definitely came more. Obviously, I'm not saying it you don't already know, but I think that's where the messy side it comes from, for the punk side. Personally, me with grindcore, I prefer that side of grindcore more than the technical side of it, because I think it's more in keeping with what it traditionally was. Do you know what I mean? And being a fan of punk and stuff like that, it talks to me more. And the technical stuff, I think the more technical it gets, it kind of stops being grindcore.
That's kind of it. The apple has fallen pretty far from the tree in that sense, because modern grindcore now to me is a really daunting prospect. I mean, you have to be fucking amazing to play it.
I mean, they use drum machines now because it's just really difficult for a drummer to actually play with the things they want them
agoraphobic
to play. And Genghis Khan and all that. You know what I mean?
Do they use a drum machine?
Yeah, they've got a drum machine.
Right, okay. Again, they're kind of more like the art side of it. Again, that's another thing that it did as well. It went off into like discordant axis and stuff like that.
As you're saying though, the fascination with Reek of Putrefaction kind of feeds into where bands like Genghis Khan came from, because that was the kind of art school taking it. Even stuff like the Locust and stuff like that kind of came from that angle as well.
I mean, on Reek of Putrefaction, Bill also says that they just weren't ready to go in the studio. And that it's just inept, the whole thing. They're playing the production
for 22 songs as well, and they said that they didn't get a lot of guidance for the guy that was the engineer.
And I think when you listen to it, it's exhausting, and not in a good way, because it just doesn't ever seem to go anywhere.
It's very like Scum and Napalm Death in a lot of ways. Do you know what I mean? It's like Scum gets its arse licked, and I'm a massive Napalm Death fan. I'm of all their career. I think it's like the cool thing to say, I like Scum, but Scum's not really that good, and I respect it because what it spawned later on, and how influential it is to the whole grindcore movement, if you like. And I think Reek's kind of like that as well. I think it kind of gets its arse licked because it's kind of a wee bit of the I like their demo before they get signed, that sort of attitude. So I don't rate it.
So the guys who actually recorded it are listed as frenzied fornicator of fetid fetishes and sickening grisly fets on bass and lead vocals, gratuitously brutal asphyxiator of ulcerated pyoxanthus goatras on guitar and co-lead vocals, and grim gargler and eviscerator of matured neoplasm on drums and backing vocals.
You love it.
Catchy.
So the artwork in this album is legendary. It's a collage of really disgusting body parts, and it's taken from a colour atlas of forensic pathology. That's
got a wee story about this if you want
that was sliced up. Yeah, please. Can I just say, I know that having listened to Jeff talking about it, he felt really alienated by the sort of pixies and fairies and dragons and swashbuckling heroes of the kind of Manowar,
Iron Maiden type stuff.
Iron Maiden type thing. He didn't really like that at all. He was really into it. There was an artist, German artist called John Hartfield, and John Hartfield did these kind of collage things as well, but they were extremely political. Some of them were quite gruesome as well. They were designed to protest against fascism and neo-Nazism and stuff. He's got one image that's actually quite famous because the hand has 5 fingers, is also the cover of the debut album by System of a Down.
All right, okay.
That's one of his pieces. But yeah, so Carcass weren't the first guys to do this. The earache office had been raided by the Vice Squad as a result. I think it was a jazz musician called John Zorn, who Mike Patton had done stuff with, brought out an album called Guts of a Virgin. And Guts of a Virgin I think it was Japanese or something Japanese, like that. And it had a sort of post-mortem picture of someone with the fetus removed from their womb on the front, and it got stopped at customs and led to this kind of clampdown.
Yep, I actually remember hearing about that at the time, because I'm an old cunt.
Jinx.
So what was your story then about this record?
Alright, well, I bought Symphonies of Sickness, right?
That's the follow-up.
That's follow-up, right? I bought it, and it must have been, I'm saying, it wasn't when it came out. It was probably around about 93, something like that, right? And I bought it. Now, taking that back to my household, you know, how do you explain that to your dad? Because the cover's the black cover and it's kind of monochrome and stuff. That's like that. But when you the actual all the shit, the horrible stuff's in the inside when you open up. It's a gatefold, and I was so fucking disturbed. Not disturbed because I was disturbed by it, but I was like, if my dad finds this, man, he's going to fucking throw me out the house, man, because it was full on. Do you know what I mean? It's like bits of burnt bodies and fucking entrails and shit. And I actually got my friend to keep it at his house, man.
So with Reek of Putrefaction, they kept all the grotesquerie on the outside of the album, and as a result, despite all the peel attention and stuff like that, it couldn't get sold in the majority of retailers, you know, or it got sold, you know, kind of half covered up, things like that.
You know, if you're on John Peel's show and you can't get the record, then that's going to make you really big, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. It's like that whole parental advisory thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite taboo, isn't it? Yeah. So in terms of track titles and lyrics, I suppose all three members wrote lyrics on this album. Track titles kind of in keeping with the cover art, regurgitation of giblets, quality for comedy points, malignant defecation, vomited anal tract. Microwaved uterogestation and genital grinder.
Genital grinder's my personal favourite.
Classic, yeah. So yeah, you know, pioneers of gore grind, even though they didn't necessarily mean to be. Hidden in there are some wee hints of things. Was it the song Piosified? That's got like little hints of what was coming, and that track Oxidized Razor Masticator has got wee hints of it as well. I did, as a final thought on this, see a quote in Louder Sound about it that says, "It sounds like it was recorded in the bowels of a rotting yak."
Aye, yeah, I can get that. Aye,
metal imagery. So Symphonies of Sickness that you mentioned there, Joe. Big jump in the evolution of sound. As you said, the artwork, it was consistent because they had more of that collage, but it was put on the inside, and that was deliberate this time because they didn't want to sabotage the potential reach of the album by having it on the outside and getting it, you know, delisted from all these different stores. And I think Jeff's made a comment about how that could probably be said to be their first moment of selling out, because they're a band that have been accused of that with almost every single album. But you know, putting the mess on the inside, but the cover, the kind of monochrome cover with the little dots and stuff like that.
Smart.
If you hold it away from your face and turn it upside down, you see it's actually a murder photo of, I think it's a young woman who's been hit with an axe. Like, it's still nasty.
Still pretty brutal. It's far better than if they had put the gory stuff in the cover up, wouldn't have been as good, I don't think.
Yeah,
I've heard that it's Chris Miles' favourite album. So
played at his much genital grind played at his funeral.
So yeah, they're already kind of refining it a bit. That album kind of maintained the gore and the stupidity a wee bit, but the song structures are more evolved.
sound like a band on this record.
Yeah.
Aye. Colin Richardson's involvement was massive in that as well.
Oh yeah.
It was the phrase they used. He kicked them into shape in the studio.
Aye.
Apparently he's quite good at that. He's quite good at like terrorising his people that he records
He
with.
was back in the day. Aye.
So there's a lot of like chaotic kind of messy grind stuff, passages of that, but then it goes into some really pretty solid death metal. It's still a little bit sloppy in places, but it's definitely a lot more together. And it came out the same year as other classic death metal releases, I guess. Bolt Thrower's Realm of Chaos came out then. Morbid Angel's Altars of Madness as well.
First record.
Yep. Highlights on it, I mean, Ruptured in Purulence, I suppose Cadaveric Incubator of Endoparasites. Fucking names, by the way, honestly.
That's gold.
Crepitating Bowel Erosion.
Fucking brilliant.
They must have just sat howling with laughter as they came out.
I mean, it's total tongue in cheek. It's them being vegan in it. It was a whole point. It was to kind of take what they thought was happening to animals and turning it on humans. So in a way, it's kind of political. In a way, in their own way.
I know Bill said that he felt very comfy defending it on that basis because he was like, in their minds, especially as being like righteous young men, they were like, yeah, so we're getting criticised for being disgusting and revelling and murder and
butchery.
Whereas we would never consider eating an animal. You know what I mean?
Exactly,
and the people accusing us of this do this regularly. So fair enough. But yeah,
they do this thing for a few records where they have a song title which is from the title of the album before.
Yep.
The first song on this is Reek of Putrefaction, and I really fucking like that song, man. It's got some outrageous like pig squeal vocals. It's also got like outrageous whammy bar guitars, which I hadn't really done on the first record, but it's a total death metal thing, right?
Yep.
I've written here, it's got more body and depth than whatever the fuck that last album was, because I couldn't connect to the first record at all.
I don't think anybody really can.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, like Joe, you'll probably know this. Do they use pitch shifters on the vocals?
Only on Bill's, not on Jeff's.
So that is a pitch shift. That's not. It's not his actual voice.
All the deep stuff. That's only on Bill's though. I always think when you listen to Jeff sing, he sounds like a corpse, like a rock. You can imagine if a corpse sang.
It's interesting how we'll probably talk about this as we go on, but his voice gets cleaner.
Well. Absolutely. Even by the time you get to the third record, he's almost. That's the way he sounds on records after.
Yeah. He reminds me a wee bit of Obituary.
John Tardy.
I couldn't have told you that.
Obviously, you know death metal better than both of us. The high low vocal and the low vocal thing like reminds me immediately of Cradle of Filth, because they do that a lot. But was that a common thing back then for bands to be doing that kind of dual vocal approach like that, or was that relatively fresh with them?
Non-death metal, no. The only other band I can think that came out around about the same time, but obviously not the same sort of music, would have been Extreme Noise Terror. It's more a hardcore thing, you know what I mean? You get two singers. So Extreme Noise Terror, I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
Really kind of crusty punk band. Where is it there for you again? Ipswich. But so they had two singers. But at the time they were probably the only death metal band I know that had two vocals. Well, actually, I suppose Napalm kind of had it. You'd have Barney would do the kind of the deeper stuff, and then you would have Mitch would do the kind of the really kind of high, almost like the Japanese noisecore stuff. So I suppose, but not. I would say probably Carcass utilised it more, but they kind of dropped that. Every album, Bill sang less. Do you know what I mean? So,
I'm curious. Did ENT not also have dreads?
Well, one of the members did, aye.
Yeah. Carcass, Bill had dreads at one point, didn't he?
Did, aye. In fact, the guy from ENT that had dreads is dead now, man. A guy called Phil Vane.
Right.
He died about 15 years ago or something.
Anyone in Napalm have dreads?
Maybe just manky hair, but no, I don't think they had dreads. No.
Try to find more connections here. So we're ready to go on to the third album. Love this name, love trying to say this name. Necroticism, Descanting the Insalubrious. Now I'm saying descanting and not decanting because it's different.
Aye,
descanting
like
being
vocal,
singing,
aye.
Yeah, whereas decanting is sort of emptying a vessel of its contents. Yep, so basically singing about bad things. The band themselves see it as their first step fully away from any sort of accusations of grindcore. They consider that a bit more like progressive death metal. Eric said they actually got hate mail sent about how polished and slick this sounded, including one that compared it to a Poison record.
Fuck off. That's just it. But you've got to remember, the mindset back then. That's the thing that's missing now from death metal, and probably one of the reasons I don't listen to it anymore is because it was the alternative to things that were clean. So I get, if you look at the mindset back then, was people, if you listen to that music, you wanted it to be fucking horrible. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now, if you listen to death metal, it sounds like fucking pop music. Do you know what I mean? It's so clean, and it's not meant to sound like that. It's meant to be the alternative to the fucking other shit. Do you know what I mean?
Fucking blame Chris Moyles for that as well.
Fuck that cunt. It's his fault, man.
Let's do it.
But I mean, this whole kind of thing about blaming them for selling out or whatever happened with every subsequent album.
It happens with a lot of bands I've noticed as well, right? Like who basically are totally DIY and then just keep climbing a lot. Like NoFX were always accused of it, and they never signed to a major label, and they always did their own thing.
NoFX?
Yeah, they were always accused of selling it.
NoFX just sound like NoFX. They sounded exactly the same as they did when they first started.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
I agree with you. They didn't change. It's only because they moved. Sick of It All was exactly the same. It was Sick of It All. Their first two records were on, I can't remember the label. It was an independent label. But by the time they did scratch the surface, they'd signed to
Epitaph.
No. That was Elektra. It was Elektra they signed to.
Wow. Okay.
Aye, because at that time, that was around about the time Carcass were, like all the labels were basically just buying up extreme bands. So you get Carcass and on a major label, Sick of It All, and it was exactly the same. And I'm soon as Sick of It All signed to that label, everybody's like, fucking sell out. No, and have you actually heard the album? It's the most aggressive album of that date. So it's just that fucking metal mindset that does my nothing. It's like
at this point they had Michael Amott on second guitar. I think they greatly kind of improved their songwriting and playing as well. Although it was said, and I noticed them saying this, and I think it was actually Michael himself said that in interviews. He was like, yeah, okay, so I came on and things seemed like they stepped up, but most of that was already written.
Aye, exactly.
And all of those kind of changes were already underway before I actually got involved. The album is a total riff fest. Michael was definitely something that helped bring the band forward. The players really gelled. I think Bill spoke about how well he gelled with him, and there just were more riffs being brought to the table, which is why there's more riffs on the album itself. Bill has said when we were doing that third record, we still didn't know how to play solos properly, but once we even started to get close to being able to shred, we realised it wasn't even worth it, because you couldn't tell the difference between half of those guys. And I think that's quite interesting, that because that was a trope that was almost seen as a badge of like, are you good, can you just fucking shred?
It was the age of Satriani and stuff like that, and Steve Vai, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and so they kind of rejected that. They were like, well, yeah, we're getting to there, but we actually don't want to now, don't want to fall into that trap.
A lot of other metal bands before that were doing that as well. Like a lot of the solos in their songs like Echo Slayer, but a lot more melodic, and they were doing the same kind of shredding thing way back in the 80s, you know what I mean? It was a common trope for a lot of metal bands to be shredding.
even Megadeth, do you know what I mean? As much as I can't really be asked with them, like Marty Friedman and stuff like that, you know, and even Chris Poland, the guy that played before, I mean, those guys were Chris Poland was a jazz guitarist, just so happened to be in, and he was doing all that, you know, crazy shit back in the fucking mid-80s.
So instead, Carcass kind of added repetition and even some melodic hooks.
Yeah, well, I think it's quite interesting because from this point onwards, they become quite groovy. It's the same kind of time when Pantera became groovy as well, so I'm wondering, because remember, they were a hair metal band to begin with.
Carcass were very much into Pantera. That they actually they'll be quite openly.
That does make sense, but you need to wonder, like, where did Pantera take that from? Because that wasn't originally what they were either. I don't know what the lineage would be of bands that are doing groovy stuff.
Well, Pantera were always accused of ripping off another band that came out of Texas around about the same time as Pantera were doing their hair metal thing. It was a band called Exorder. Go and check out the album The Law by Exorder. It predates Pantera, and it just sounds exactly like Pantera. It's groove metal basically, even down to the vocals. They really are the kind of, in my opinion, they were the first kind of groove band, and Pantera took that and made it better.
So some highlights off of that, I guess, in Propagation, the first track. Which is apparently an even split medley of riffs from both Bill and Ken that they said took ages to get into its final form. That was a song they workshopped for ages to try and blend these different elements that they didn't want to drop. Good name, I guess, Corporal Jigsaw Quandary.
Yeah, I like that song.
And track 5, Incarnated Solvent Abuse.
The best title on it, man.
The lyrics on this one as well began to drift a bit for just outright gore into moments of quasi-metaphor and even slight complexity. The photo on the record was taken at Ken's dad's vet surgery.
That's right.
Where he'd watched his dad operate on animals when he was younger.
That's it.
Yeah.
That looks staged though, that one, right?
Aye.
Of course. Not like the other ones.
Oh, no. I mean, the other ones were definitely
unfortunately real.
1993, Heartwork. We'll get back to that. 1996, Swan Song.
Right.
The Western free world, yes, in decline. Still free to consume, free to breathe. Free to exist, free to dream.
Right.
I remember when this fucker came out, man.
Right, so as we said, came bang bottom of almost every single poll on this band. Here's just a wee bit of background to it. First of all, they didn't have this title before they recorded it, although they did already have severe doubts about their future.
Yep.
Yeah, did they not already agree to break up before they even released the record?
Yeah, I think they actually had the discussion about breaking up in 95, and this came out in 96 because Ken had already gone on and started
Black Star. Jeff, aye.
They apparently started the recording with enthusiasm, but because they spent 2 months recording it, they eventually lost all enjoyment, said it became a total slog. And I'd seen Jeff comment that if they had cared more about it, and if things hadn't been the way they were, they would probably have remixed it and remastered it, and he reckoned it could have actually sounded a hell of a lot better than it did.
Could have sounded better, but the songs weren't there, man.
Well, see, Jeff reckons that it would have been seen a lot more favourably if the guitar tone had been closer to that of Heartwork. The sounds were not nearly as good. It was technically recorded on Columbia, which we'll explain when we talk about Heartwork, but the band split, and Columbia actually contacted Eric to see if they wanted to release it, as they weren't sure what to do with it in the circumstances, and I think Carcass had asked them to send it back as well. Eric apparently got thousands and thousands of returned copies upon release from stores that just couldn't shift them, but within a year it seemed like the band had sort of reached a new fan base, because they'd split up and then acquired a bit of kind of mythic status, and then this whole new kind of generation of fans quickly bought up all those copies of Swan Song. So what went from a stockroom full of this rejected album was gone. They actually had to get it repressed. Ken Owen actually said that this was his favourite record.
Because it was the easiest one for him to play on, man.
Yeah. Louder Sound have said that it's much maligned, but in reality far better than you remember. We Are the Pit said Death and Roll Grooves feel like a different band, or a band ready to wrap things up.
I would go with that. I mean, there is stuff on it that is decent.
We should couch it a bit, right? It's not seen as being objectively terrible.
No.
It's seen as being the poorest of their work.
Yes.
But not objectively terrible. And they did show the complexity they were capable of, but it overall felt a bit too basic, a bit uninspired. Yep. It was the sort of general vibe. I was thinking,
it's a rock record, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're coming for Heartwork, which is very much melodic, but it's still fucking in your face. Do you know what I mean? Mm. And Swan Song isn't.
Well, but I mean, Bill Cedar said himself of it, like, he'd been introducing more traditional heavy metal elements for a while, which is clear, but he was really wanting to strip it back and make it simpler. And he was saying one of the reasons why there was a bit of discontent is because, like, Ken just didn't want to play long sections of 4/4. Just wasn't the kind of drummer he was. Mm-hmm. And that started to lead to, friction. And he does like that record, but there's certain things that he says now, or back then I guess, it's like, doesn't really make sense. Now that he listens to it, there's some things he hears like, what the fuck was I thinking when I recorded that? You know what I mean? It is a very simple record. It's almost grungy in places, I think.
It's a big departure, man. Like, too much. Do you know what I mean?
Alice in Chains vibes in that sense.
And Pantera's even more so in a lot of the kind of slower kind
the
of
song Black Star sounds like a Pantera song.
Oh, the riff does. Aye, absolutely. Aye.
Jeff, is it pains to point out that the cover art on it was done by G. Voucher, who was the silent member of Crass. She was, she was famed for doing all this like protest art. She did the Crass covers, obviously, and a load of other stuff besides. And Jeff, as we mentioned earlier on with the German artist, is like a big fan of protest art. She was really known for anarchist and feminist themes and some of her work. Some highlights, I suppose. Keep On Rotting in the Free World is
that's a decent
it's all right.
Man.
It's actually catchy.
I hate the pun on the name though. I hate it. Tomorrow Belongs to Nobody.
Let's go.
Cool song.
And as you said, Black Star's got these really jaggy grooves in it.
Do you know what is actually quite good about this record? Is you can hear the bass in it.
Aye, and that was obviously we'll come to it, but that was a bone of contention with Jeff with Heartwork.
Absolutely interesting observation.
And you can actually hear the bass doing different things from the guitars in it as well, which is a bit a bit weird. Yeah, totally bizarre, right? The bass tone itself is a lot less aggressive than all the tones are really on this record. So yeah, it is an interesting departure, but it doesn't really hang together like they're good records though.
No, it sounds like you were saying, it sounds like a band that's just kind of half-arsing it.
He's losing the love.
Forgot what they're about, do you know what I mean? I think maybe they put a wee bit too much pressure on themselves with every album to try and reinvent themselves. I mean, they even said that in interviews and stuff like that they felt like every record they had to do something completely different, and I get that, but they completely dropped the blast beats altogether. There's no blast beats on Swan Song at all, and it's very kind of formulaic, you know what I mean? Like the kind of verse chorus, middle 8 verse chorus, So I wasn't really that popular at the time with me or my mates.
Bill said that he was the first person to ditch the band, to like leave the band, so he left Jeff to basically pick up the e-rake shit and all that. And
oh really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
So
they seem to have gotten over it.
Yeah,
they're good, mate. That's one thing about these guys. They do seem, especially the core, Ken, Bill, the three. They are. You can tell when they're together. They're close friends.
That's why it's so nice to watch their interviews. Like it's really nice to watch the way they interact, and they come across just really, really well.
Yeah.
Before this gets unwieldy,
so timing wise, I think we're getting a bit long here. Will we just, how about we put a wee cork in it for now and maybe resume next week?
Yeah, let's do that.
So Swan Song in the bag. We're going to come back with some other, triumphant return after 17 years away, Joe.
Yes, correct.
Right, let's do that. Then I'll see you back here, same place,
same
next week.
Time, yeah.